Kevin will execute this better than you ever could. You can be his assistant if you want to stay involved." My father said this while holding my business plan, the one I'd spent 18 months developing, the one with my handwriting in the margins and my dreams on every page. What my father didn't know was that the quiet daughter he'd just dismissed would become the most feared venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, and in exactly 2 years. I would fund the company that would burn my brother's stolen empire to the ground while my family watched helplessly from a bankruptcy courtroom. Let me tell you how I went from assistant to architect of destruction. My name is Sophia Grant, and I grew up in Palo Alto, California, the beating heart of American innovation. You'd think being raised in the shadow of Stanford, surrounded by tech giants and startup mythology, would have given me every advantage. Instead, it taught me the cruelest lesson of my life, that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones most determined to keep you small. My father, William Grant, was a mid-level executive at a semiconductor company. Not a founder, not a visionary, just a competent manager who'd ridden the tech wave to a comfortable life. My mother, Diane, was a former marketing director who'd given up her career to raise us, a decision she reminded us of at least once a week. Together, they created a home that worshipped success, but only recognized it when it came in a very specific package. That package was my brother, Kevin. Kevin was 2 years older than me, and from the moment I could understand language, I understood that he was special and I was not. He was the firstborn son in a family that pretended gender didn't matter while treating us completely differently. Kevin got the car on his 16th birthday. I got a lecture about saving money. Kevin's college was paid for in full. I was told scholarships build character. Kevin's opinions were insights. Mine were interesting perspectives. The double standard was so consistent that I stopped noticing it for a while. It was just the water I swam in, invisible, omnipresent, and slowly drowning me without my awareness. I was a good student. Better than good, actually. I graduated summa cum laude from Berkeley with a double major in economics and computer science. I worked at a consulting firm for 3 years, saved every penny, and learned everything I could about how businesses actually worked, not the theory, but the messy, complicated reality of building something from nothing. And then I had my idea. It came to me during a sleepless night in my cramped San Francisco apartment. A platform connecting small manufacturers with sustainable packaging suppliers. Sounds boring, I know, but boring ideas that solve real problems are where fortunes are made. The supply chain for eco-friendly packaging was fragmented, confusing, and expensive. Small businesses wanted to go green but couldn't navigate the complexity. I saw a way to simplify everything with a marketplace model that would take a small percentage of each transaction. I spent 18 months developing the concept. I talked to hundreds of potential customers. I built financial models that showed exactly how we'd reach profitability. I mapped out competitor landscapes, identified strategic partners, created a pitch deck that was, if I'm being honest, exceptional. I was 27 years old, and I was ready to change my life. The mistake I made was wanting my father's approval. Looking back, I can see how pathetic it was. I was a grown woman with a brilliant idea, and instead of pitching to investors, I pitched to my dad. I wanted him to really see me for the first time. I wanted him to look at my work and finally understand that his daughter was just as capable, just as worthy, as his precious son. I drove to my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon. Kevin was there, of course. He'd moved back home after his latest entrepreneurial venture had fizzled out. He was 30 years old, living in his childhood bedroom, and my parents acted like he was just between opportunities. I set up my laptop in the living room and delivered my pitch. 20 minutes of polished presentation, followed by a detailed walkthrough of the financials, the market opportunity, the competitive advantages. I answered every question my father asked. I addressed every concern before he could raise it. When I finished, I waited for his response with my heart pounding. My father was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Kevin, who'd been lounging on the couch scrolling through his phone the entire time. "What do you think, son?" Kevin shrugged. "It's not bad. Basic, but not bad. Not bad. 18 months of work, and my brother, who hadn't built anything successful in his entire life, dismissed it as not bad. But the real devastation came next. My father nodded slowly, then turned back to me with an expression I'll never forget. It was gentle, almost pitying, like he was about to deliver bad news to a child. Sophia, this is good work. Really. But executing a startup takes a certain temperament, a certain drive. Kevin has been wanting to get back into the game, and honestly, I think this idea might be exactly what he needs. I didn't understand at first. What do you mean? I mean, Kevin should run this. He has the personality for it, the connections. You could support him, handle the operations side, maybe. Be his assistant while he builds the relationships and raises the money. The room went silent. Even Kevin looked surprised, though not displeased. You want to give my idea to Kevin, I said slowly. The idea I developed. The business I designed. You want me to be his assistant? My father sighed like I was being difficult. Sophia, don't be dramatic. This is about what's best for the idea. Kevin can take this further than you can. That's just reality. I looked at my mother, hoping for some intervention. She was studying her hands, refusing to meet my eyes. I looked at Kevin. He was already nodding, his mind clearly racing with possibilities, my dreams, repackaged as his next adventure. Something broke inside me in that moment. Not loudly, not dramatically, more like a rope that had been fraying for years, finally snapping clean through. I felt it go, felt the weight of a lifetime of diminishment fall away, and in its place rose something cold and clear and absolutely certain. I closed my laptop. Keep it, I said. Keep the whole thing. The pitch deck, the research, the financial models. Give it all to Kevin. My father smiled, relieved. I'm glad you understand, sweetheart. This is for the best. You'll see. I'm sure I will. I walked out of that house with nothing but my laptop bag and my dignity. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't look back. I just left. And then I got to work. Here's what my father didn't know about me. I'd been playing small my entire life because that's what was expected of me. But I'd also been watching, learning, preparing for a moment I didn't know was coming until it arrived. I had savings, more than my family realized. I had connections from my consulting years, people who knew my work and respected my mind. And I had something more valuable than any of that. I had absolute clarity about what I wanted and who I was. Done being 0.3 days after walking out of my parents' house, I had coffee with a former client named Margaret Wu. Margaret was a retired tech executive who'd made her fortune in enterprise software. She'd always been kind to me, always treated me like a peer rather than a subordinate. I need advice, I told her. I want to get into venture capital. Margaret raised an eyebrow. That's not advice territory. That's completely changing your career. I know. It's brutal. Competitive. The boys' club to end all boys' clubs. I know that too. Margaret studied me for a long moment. What happened? I told her everything. The pitch, my father, Kevin, the assistant comment. All of it. When I finished, Margaret was quiet. Then she laughed, not meanly, but with genuine delight. Sophia, she said, I've been looking for someone to run my new fund. Someone hungry, smart, and pissed off enough to outwork everyone else. I think I just found her. That's how I became an associate at Apex Ventures. Margaret's fund was small but growing, focused on sustainability and supply chain innovation, my exact areas of expertise. I started at the bottom, analyzing deals, conducting due diligence, learning the art of separating good ideas from great ones, but I rose fast. Very fast. Within 6 months, I was leading investment discussions. Within a year, I was sourcing my own deals. Within 18 months, Margaret made me a partner, the youngest in the fund's history. You have the eye, she told me. The instinct. Most people in this business are just following trends. You actually understand what makes companies work. I understood because I'd lived it. I'd felt what it was like to have a good idea and no power. Now I had the power and I was going to use it. During this time, I kept track of Kevin. He launched the company using my stolen idea. He called it Green Chain Solutions, which I had to admit was a decent name. My father had helped him raise a small seed round from family friends. Kevin had hired a team, built a basic version of the platform, and started making noise in the sustainable packaging space. He was doing exactly what I'd predicted someone could do with my concept. The market was there. The opportunity was real. And Kevin, for all his mediocrity, was competent enough to stumble forward, but I also saw his weaknesses. His platform was clunky, poorly designed. His customer acquisition cost was astronomical. He was burning through capital at an unsustainable rate, covering it up with optimistic projections and family money. He had my roadmap, but he didn't have my understanding of what made it work, and then I found Greenbox. Maya Okonkwo was a 29-year-old entrepreneur who'd built something remarkable. Her company, Greenbox, was tackling the same market as Kevin's sustainable packaging marketplace, but with better technology, better unit economics, and a founder who actually understood the space. The problem was, she couldn't get funding. She'd been rejected by dozens of VCs. She was a black woman in a white male industry, pitching in rooms that had already decided she didn't belong before she said a single word. Her pitch landed on my desk through a mutual connection, and I read it with growing excitement. This wasn't just a good company, it was a company that could dominate the market if properly capitalized. A company that could crush any competitor in its path, including GreenChain Solutions, including Kevin. I met Maya at a coffee shop in Oakland. She was sharp, passionate, and exhausted from fighting for scraps of attention. "I'll be honest with you," she said. "I've done this pitch probably 60 times. I'm running out of runway. If this meeting doesn't go well, I'm probably going to have to shut down." "It's going to go well," I said. She looked at me skeptically. "You haven't even heard the pitch yet. I read your materials. Your tech is superior to everyone else in the space. Your CAC is half the industry average. Your retention rates are exceptional. The only reason you haven't raised is because investors are idiots who can't see past their own biases." Maya blinked. "That's not what I expected you to say. I'm going to invest in Greenbox," I continued. "Apex is going to lead a $10 million Series A. We're going to give you the capital to scale aggressively and capture the market before anyone else can catch up." Why? It was a fair question. I considered lying, giving her some professional answer about market opportunity and portfolio strategy. But something about Maya made me want to tell the truth. "Because your biggest competitor stole his business plan from me," I said. "He's my brother. He took my idea, my research, everything I built, because my father decided he deserved it more than I did. I want to beat him. I want to destroy what he built with my own concept. And you're going to help me do it." Maya was silent for a long moment. Then she smiled slow, understanding, fierce. "I think we're going to work well together," she said. We shook hands. The war had begun. Over the next 18 months, I poured everything into Greenbox. Not just money, though I invested heavily and convinced Margaret to increase our stake, but time, connections, strategic guidance. I introduced Maya to every relevant player in the supply chain world. I helped her hire a world-class engineering team. I connected her with enterprise customers who'd been waiting for exactly what she was building. Greenbox grew like a weed in fertile soil. Revenue tripled, then tripled again. They expanded into new verticals, signed exclusive partnerships, built a brand that became synonymous with sustainable packaging solutions. Meanwhile, Kevin was drowning. GreenChain couldn't compete. Every customer they pursued, Greenbox won. Every partnership they sought, Greenbox had already locked up. Kevin tried to pivot, tried to differentiate, tried everything, but he was playing catch-up with inferior technology and a team that didn't have the skills to close the gap. He raised a desperate bridge round from family friends. He took a second mortgage on a condo my parents had helped him buy. He burned through all of it trying to stay alive, and then he burned through my parents' retirement savings. I learned this later. My father had invested almost everything in Kevin's company, convinced that his golden boy would deliver returns that would set them up for life. When GreenChain started failing, Kevin convinced them to invest more. And more. And more. By the time Kevin filed for bankruptcy, my parents had lost nearly $400,000. Their retirement was devastated. Their faith in their golden child was shattered, and they still didn't know I was involved. The bankruptcy hearing was held in a San Francisco courtroom on a gray Tuesday morning. I wasn't required to attend. Apex was just an investor in a competitor, not a creditor, but I wanted to be there. Needed to be there. The courtroom was half empty. Kevin sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last 2. My parents sat in the gallery behind him, my mother clutching my father's arm, both of them wearing expressions of confused devastation. The proceedings were routine at first, creditors listing their claims, lawyers arguing over asset valuations. But then came the part I'd been waiting for. The court calls Maya Okonkwo, CEO of Greenbox Incorporated, to testify regarding market conditions affecting the debtor's business. Maya took the stand, composed and professional. She answered questions about the sustainable packaging market, about competition, about why Greenchain had failed while Greenbox had thrived, and then the attorney asked the question I'd been waiting for. Ms. Okonkwo, can you describe Greenbox's funding history? Specifically, the Series A round that enabled your company's expansion. Of course, Maya said. Our Series A was led by a single investor who believed in our vision when no one else would. She provided not just capital but strategic guidance that was instrumental to our success. And who is this investor? Maya smiled slightly. Sophia Grant, managing partner at Apex Ventures. I watched my father's head turn toward the gallery. I watched Kevin's face go pale. I watched my mother's hand fly to her mouth. And when their eyes found me sitting in the back row, dressed in a designer suit, looking nothing like the dismissed daughter they remembered, I raised my hand in a small wave. Nobody waved back. After the hearing, I waited outside the courthouse. I knew they'd come to me, they had to. They needed answers. They needed someone to blame. My father reached me first. Sophia. His voice was hoarse, broken. What did you? How could you? How could I what, Dad? I kept my voice calm, pleasant. How could I invest in a superior company in a market I understand better than anyone? How could I back a founder who actually had the skills to execute? How could I do my job? You destroyed your brother. No. Kevin destroyed himself. He took an idea he didn't understand, executed it poorly, and failed. That's not my fault. That's just business. Kevin appeared behind my father, his face twisted with rage. You did this on purpose. You funded them to destroy me. I funded them because they were going to win regardless. I just accelerated the timeline. I paused. And yes, Kevin, I enjoyed every minute of watching you fail with my idea. The idea you stole. The idea Dad handed you because he thought you'd execute it better. My mother stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Sophia, we lost everything. Your father's retirement. Our savings. Everything. Something flickered in my chest, not guilt exactly, but something adjacent to it. My parents had been collateral damage, caught in the crossfire of a war they didn't even know was being fought. But then I remembered. I remembered my mother's silence when my father gave away my future. I remembered her looking at her hands instead of defending me. I remembered a lifetime of small dismissals and quiet favoritism. You invested in Kevin's company, I said. That was your choice. You believed in him, not me. You bet everything on the golden child. I shrugged. Bad bet. I turned to walk away, then stopped. For what it's worth, I didn't know about the retirement money. That was Kevin's doing, not mine. But I won't pretend I'm sorry about how things turned out. You all made your choices about who I was and what I deserved a long time ago. I just made different choices about who I wanted to become. I left them standing on the courthouse steps, my father speechless, my mother sobbing, my brother broken. I didn't look back. That was 3 years ago. Greenbox went public last fall. The IPO was one of the biggest of the year, and my stake in the company made me wealthier than I'd ever imagined. Maya became a media darling, a symbol of what's possible when overlooked founders get the support they deserve. I left Apex Ventures to start my own fund, Grant Capital, focused specifically on women and minority founders who've been ignored by traditional investors. We deployed over $200 million into 43 companies. 16 of them are already valued at over $100 million. My parents have tried to contact me. Awkward voicemails about family and forgiveness and moving forward. I haven't responded. Maybe someday I will. Maybe I'll find the generosity to sit across from them and explain, calmly, how their choices shaped mine. Maybe I'll give them the closure they're looking for. But not yet. The wound is still too fresh, the memory of that living room too vivid. Kevin, I hear, is working in sales somewhere. A regular job with a regular salary, nothing entrepreneurial, nothing ambitious. The golden child learned that some metals don't shine as bright as everyone assumed. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did. If funding Greenbox was revenge or justice or something in between. The honest answer is, I don't think about it in those terms. I saw a brilliant founder who deserved a chance. I gave her that chance. The fact that her success destroyed my brother's stolen company was a consequence, not a goal. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't smile when the gavel came down on Kevin's bankruptcy. I'd be lying if I said the wave wasn't satisfying. My father once told me Kevin would execute my idea better than I ever could. He was wrong about a lot of things. But he was especially wrong about that. They said I wasn't built for success. They said I should support someone else's dream. They said I would never be more than an assistant. Now I write checks that change lives, build companies that reshape industries, and make decisions that move markets. The family failure became the family nightmare. And honestly, I've never slept better.